You came here to find out what Mother is about, and I'm going to get to that, I promise. But before I do, I just wanted to say that I'm always a little bit wary of videos where someone explains what a film means. And I'm always wary of people who minutes after seeing a film rush to the internet to find out exactly what it was about. The fact is, film is an art form and all art is subjective. Sure, the creator may have had an intended meaning when they made it, but once they set it free into the world, it's no longer theirs. It belongs to the audience, and it's completely open to interpretation. Coincidentally, I went to a screening of 2001: A Space Odyssey last night, and afterwards, some people who hadn't seen it before were talking about going online to find out more about it. And I'm all for that. I love film reviews and essays and analysis, but let it sink in first. Allow the film to percolate in your brain for a little while. Ask yourself how it made you feel, whether it reminded you of any of your own experiences, whether you related to any of the characters or their struggles. Before you find out what a film means, figure out what it means to you first. And yes, every film is about something. With the exception of Ghostbusters, which my friend Patrick recently made a great video on, you should check that out. Every film is about something. Be it a grounded love story or a high-concept alien invasion, every film has a theme, a deeper meaning. The other reason I'm wary of videos like this is because unless the director has publicly stated or told you directly what the film is about, as obvious as the film's theme may seem, there's no possible way you can really know for sure. And it's possible someone else may think their interpretation was the glaringly obvious one. There may be several possible interpretations, some of which you didn't even think of. As a creator myself, I'm always pleasantly surprised when people share a new interpretation of my work with me that I didn't even intend. Sometimes it helps me to see my own work in a whole new light. And that's why I wanted to make this video about Mother. It does have one central theme. The entire film, in fact, is an allegory. The characters aren't people, they're archetypes, they're walking, talking metaphors. But even so, the film is so dense, so layered, that people have been able to interpret it in vastly different ways. Even I sat there watching it, knowing what the central allegory was able to find lots of different meanings in it. So let's jump in and look at the various different interpretations, starting with that central allegory. In its simplest form, Mother is about the earth, mankind, and the God who created them. I know this because its director, Darren Aronofsky, has alluded to this in several interviews and also said so to my face. So that's that out of the way. I met him at an event in Paris for the release of the film, and he just gushed about it. That's the only way I can describe it. He seems so proud of what he's made and so enthusiastic about its message. And it's a very political message about mankind and our behaviour and the damage we're causing to this world. As you know, Mother is ostensibly about a couple played by Jennifer Lawrence and Javier Bardem who live together in a remote house. He's a poet currently struggling to write, and she's a homemaker who takes great pride in redecorating their home after it was burned down. But actually, the couple are God and Mother Nature. Their home represents the world. In the film, man arrives first in the form of a strange couple played by Ed Harris and Michelle Pfeiffer, who represent Adam and Eve. Adam comes first, then Eve, shortly followed by their two sons, Cain and Abel. As in the Bible, Cain, in a fit of jealousy, kills Abel and becomes a wanderer. And there are plenty more religious references here, including the fact that Adam is missing a rib. That'll be the one God created Eve from, I suppose. Eve is a bit of a temptress and comes across as a very sexual creature, even prying into the sex lives of the couple who live in the house. God allows them into the part of the house he cherishes most, but forbids them from touching a special glass rock, which eventually they do touch and accidentally break, forcing him to banish them from that room altogether. This has a very Garden of Eden, forbidden fruit sort of vibe to it. Despite their betrayal, though, God has a bit of a soft spot for them and for all of humanity, who he keeps welcoming in despite their appalling behaviour in return for their adoration. Mother Nature is loving and supportive. Her sole interest is to provide food and shelter and to create paradise, as she calls it, to exist happily in it. She loves God unconditionally and seems almost subservient to him, which I guess makes sense once you realise he created her too. But she is horrified at humankind's violent, cruel, destructive behaviour and their complete disregard for this world she's created, or indeed the baby she gives birth to. Her desire to protect her world wins out, and in the end, having seen people tear apart and literally consume all that she has given them, including her newborn baby, she is pushed to her limits. She lashes out, destroying them and the whole world in the process. Plot-wise, as you can tell, a lot happens in Mother. It gets very chaotic towards the end, and I've skimmed over a lot here. It's just brimming with meaning and metaphor in every scene. And it's fun to unpack that. It's great that it can be studied and analysed, and I'm sure it will be for years to come, and I'm sure I'll see something new every single time I watch it. But what's really great about Mother is that even though it's full of religious iconography, you don't need a degree in theology to understand it, because the message is conveyed with emotion. It's difficult for the human brain to understand such a huge concept, to pick up on so many subtle little details, which is why Aronofsky has made it so personal. You don't have to be a genius to empathize with Jennifer Lawrence's character here. I mean, this is her house, her home, her life. The only life she's ever known, and it's being invaded and torn apart. And you don't need to be particularly film literate to understand what she's going through, to see the neglect, the abuse, the violence, the destruction, and to know that it's wrong. Nor is it difficult to understand what Aronofsky is saying about the kind of God who would let this happen. Javier Bardem's character is selfish and cruel and blind to the failings of these creatures he's created, probably because he created them. He's proud to a fault. He's so desperate for them to worship him that he allows them do whatever they want, even if that means destroying the world and themselves in the process. But my favourite part about all this might just be Aronofsky's choice to frame this allegory within a horror film. Because the central thread that runs through all horror is that the protagonist gets tortured, be that at the hands of a serial killer or a demon child or a poltergeist. There's always an antagonist. And what could be more horrifying than realizing we are the antagonist? We are the baddie. She's the good guy and we're killing her. And come Oscar season, people may well want to call Mother anything but a horror. I've already seen it described as a mystery drama in one place. Please, make no mistake, this is a horror film. Everything about Mother, from that first scene where Jennifer Lawrence descends the stairs in a sheer white top looking every bit the innocent virginal victim, to the long lingering shots, the way the camera leers around corners and follows her and only her throughout the film, the quiet, unnerving atmosphere in the house, which is, by the way, completely devoid of score, if you hadn't noticed. The suspenseful moments followed by jump scares, the creepy behaviour of other characters, the intention to gross you out, play on your fears, and even cause a physiological reaction. The inclusion of supernatural elements, the gruesome imagery, the ultimately brutal orgy of violence, blood, and gore. It's all synonymous with horror. Getting back to where I started, despite the obvious allegory, Mother can also be interpreted in many different ways. I heard one journalist describe the house as a woman's body, and there could be something in that. The expectations society puts on us to maintain it, to keep it perfect, whilst bombarding us with things that make it almost impossible to do so. With that interpretation, there could also be the message that we don't have control over our own bodies or what happens to them. It could also be read as a metaphor for sexual violence, a literal invasion of a woman's body. Another possible interpretation I've thought about since seeing the film is that it could be about mental illness. The house could be a person, with Jennifer Lawrence's character representing all of your self-preservation, your love and care and desire to protect and to nourish, while Javier Bardem's character represents the part of you that, driven by ambition, works too hard, neglects your well-being and depletes your energy, who lets in all the bad thoughts and negativity that ultimately lead to self-destruction. It's a bit of a bleak interpretation, but there aren't many positive interpretations of this film. Something that really struck me while watching Mother were the allusions to creativity and what it means to create. I couldn't help but relate to Javier Bardem's struggle to write, to create, and to that fear that every creative type encounters at some point, that your best work is behind you, that you'll never be able to make something you're that proud of again. There's so much in here too about the nature of celebrity, the desire to be praised for your work, and people's willingness to put aside the things that matter most to them in return for fame. In this case, for me, Javier Bardem represents the unhealthy side of creativity, where You create not for the sake of making something unique or beautiful, but for the attention and the adoration it will bring you. I also found myself quite viscerally affected by the way in which he pours himself into his work, and how by giving that away, he sort of gives away part of himself. How the world feels entitled to him, to all of him, even the parts he chose not to put into his work, the parts that should be off limits. His audience become greedy for what he makes. They consume it and feed off it and demand more and more. And he just keeps giving at the expense of the very thing that made him such a wonderful creator to begin with. His wife is referred to several times as the inspiration, and we see him use her, then neglect her, even turn his back on her in favor of what his audience wants, no matter how outrageous that may be. That image of them consuming his newborn child could be seen as the ultimate attempt to give the people what they want, regardless how wrong it is or the harm it's doing to the part of you that was once your source of inspiration. I've obviously found this meaning in the film because of who I am and what I do, and no doubt you will see things in it that I never could. Talking about 2001 with my friends last night, we came to a really similar conclusion, that it's possible to be affected by a film in so many different ways and on so many different levels. Some people think the monolith is God. I have a very literal interpretation of it as a piece of alien technology. Some people see the film as a metaphor for conception. Some people see it as man's fear of his own creations. And we've all been there, coming out of a cinema, afraid to say what you thought in case you got it wrong, but that's the beauty of film and of art in general. There are no wrong answers. Thank you for watching. If you liked this video, I've also made one on La La Land and one on Arrival, so go check them out if you have a sec. And the next time you watch a film, have a think about what it means to you.